I'm Noelle Osen, President of Wild Ones, and we're very happy to see you here this evening. This is the last of our Zoom meetings for 2025. Starting in March, we will be having our general meetings live at the Portage District Library. The meetings begin at 6:30. However, the room opens at 6 so that we can have a bit of a social hour before the meeting actually begins. I have just one quick piece of business before the program starts this evening. We need somebody who can volunteer to be a Zoom coordinator for our organization. This would only require a commitment of 1.5 to 2 hours a month just to coordinate our Zoom executive committee meetings. If you think that you can possibly fill this role, please contact us through info@kalamazooWildOnes.org. Now, I'll turn the meeting over to Quinn Edwards, who will introduce our speaker for this evening. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Noelle. My name is Quinn Edwards. I am the chapter vice president, and I also sit on the Kalamazoo Area Wild Ones Programming Committee. I'm very pleased to introduce you all to William Kirst, who is the founder of Adapt Community Supported Ecology, a 501c3 that trains community leaders who in turn offer a variety of free ecological services. He is also co-owner of Adapt Landscapes LLC, a full-scale garden design and installation company for those seeking larger, elegant native plant and perennial edible landscapes. I've never met William in person, although I did get a chance to chat with him briefly before this evening's program. But I feel like I know him because I have been following along on social media, on Instagram, and on Adapt's fantastic YouTube channel to glean lots of helpful information in my own native plant journey. So I'm very grateful for that. And when his name came up as a possible speaker for our chapter, I was very excited to have him come and speak to our group. I also wanted to mention, William will tell us a lot about Adapt Ecology and their mission, but we do have a community leader for Adapt in Kalamazoo. Her name is Calla Willette, and I am going to put a link to her page on the Adapt Ecology webpage so that you can find her information and reach out to connect with her if you are interested in starting your own small Adapt garden or joining her in volunteering. She's been at some of our Pints and Plants events, and she is lovely. So without further ado, everyone welcome William Kirst.
Hello, everybody. Before I get started, I'm gonna ask something of you guys. If possible, if you have a camera on your phone or computer, could you just turn it on for like a minute so I can scroll through and just see your faces? Because this is just a kind of weird thing for somebody like me who's very personable and really loves all the interaction that I can possibly get with people. So, okay. Most of you are there. Hello, hello. I'm going to flip through. There's 3 whole screens. Brooke, I thought you lived over by Lake St. Clair.
I do, but I decided I would jump on this call because I already know your goodness, so I want to get more of it.
Fun, cool. All right, great. All right, there's so many pages here. Oh, okay, I see. It's a lot of the same people. All right, well, thank you all for showing up tonight. All of my talks are a little bit weird and interesting, so I'm hoping that this will be the same. I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about Adapt and just a very little bit about what we do, and then I'm going to lead you through call it a thought experiment, but it's kind of like it'll start off with a short meditation. And what I want to ask of you is, if you've never done any kind of meditation before, And if you've never done, especially any kind of like visualization meditations, give yourself a lot of grace when I start speaking and just try to give into it and see what you can get out of it. You may get a lot out of it, you may get nothing, but you might as well just dive in and try to have some fun. And let me say this, if you fall asleep during it, it will only be short. So I'll give you like a good yell or something to wake you up. If you do fall asleep, it probably means you're sleep deprived and you should enjoy the rest anyway. So without further ado, I am William Kirst. I am from Adapt Community Supported Ecology. The really long story short is that I've worked in Michigan. I worked for the City of Ann Arbor Natural Area Preservation for quite a few years and worked for some other organizations and some contractors doing ecological restoration, garden installations, garden design. And through it all, I kind of just more and more came to the understanding that there's no making the world a better place through plants. That the way that we're going to make the world a better place is through people. And it just so happens that me and a lot of probably you all and the ways that we interact is that our connection to other people is through plants. But I think that a lot of us get kind of lost in the fact that we love plants so much and the beauty that we can create from restoring native ecosystems. So what I kind of realized I really want to do is get more people involved. And so in order to do that, we decided that we were going to go door to door and get people to offer people just native plant gardens and offer to plant it for them. This was in the fall and early winter, or in winter of 2019 into the winter of 2020. And as you guys may recall, sometime around March in 2020, all of a sudden we didn't want to be by any other people. So at that time, we're like, well, we have money coming in, people like this idea, so let's just put it online and we'll say, we'll give you a garden and we'll just, stay away from each other, wear masks. And so that first year, we planted 27 gardens and gave away, I think, 35 native plant garden kits. And since then, we've grown into an organization that's now in 14 cities and 3 states. We're going to be starting in Nashville this spring, so that's pretty exciting. We are in Kalamazoo, and we provide roughly about 200 ecological services a year. And the things that we are providing are free garden kits, garden kit installations, if a community leader can do it, some consultation. And then we help organize planting parties, invasive species, removal parties, just any kind of event where people can get together and get engaged and do some work. And more, I'm trying to get into just some educational aspects. I generally think that having a hands-on approach is the best way to learn, but not everybody has that opportunity. And really what we're doing at Adapt is trying to do whatever we can to get anybody involved in any way that works for them. So, one thing I like to say is that we just try to meet people where they are and get them to the next step. Probably many of you out there have noticed that if you get online, it's really difficult to sort out all the information. You get online, you're like, holy shit, what is happening here? I don't know what to plant. Of course not, because every place is really specific to that place. I learned a lot, and I planted a garden for somebody in Battle Creek, and it was like all the plants that I used were different from the plants that I would use over here. And you're like, okay, that's only an hour and a half away. And I'm well educated on this. So it was quite a learning experience for me. So imagining what, somebody who's not college educated in ecology must go through to try to figure this stuff out. So we try to remove any barriers. So what I want to do today, and I'm going to share my screen right now. Let's see. Give me a thumbs up if you're seeing that Adapt exists to sustain. Great. So this is our mission statement. We exist to sustain and promote the connections between people and the land that supports us through the community co-creation of native plant and perennial food landscapes. Our goal is to connect people through the excuse of planting native plant gardens. Hopefully by the end of this, you will all come out of it wanting to be the best neighbor you can possibly be. And if I even get like 3 of you to do that, I will feel like I've had an absolutely amazing evening. So if you look through this photo that you see here, you'll see some native plants in the front. And then you'll see this beautiful lawn and really nice, manicured, almost topiary shrubs across the street. This is where I lived for 12 years and made my first native plant garden. Luckily in Ann Arbor, we can do whatever the hell we want. So I had a jungle, and across the street from me, they had True Green. Right next to me, they had True Green. And it was really challenging. And there were many days where I would wake up, and I'm going to invite you all to be with me here. So if you can right now, what I would like you to do is close your eyes. Your eyes will only be closed for a few minutes, so don't be scared. Try not to fall asleep again. Try to stay with me through this process. So if you don't want to close your eyes, you can stare at the picture that's on your screen. I want you to take a few deep breaths and feel yourself sitting solidly on the earth. You may think you're in your home and sitting on a couch or your chair, but all of that's around you, that you're sitting on, has all come from the earth and was mineral or plant, air, water at some point in our ecological and geologic history. So wherever you are sitting on the earth. Now, if you can, I want you to pull up from your memory a beautiful weekend morning, just that perfect weekend morning. Maybe it's late spring, early summer. Your windows are open. You can hear the birds singing. The air temperature is absolutely perfect. The only time you feel the air is when a slight breeze comes through and it's just ever so slightly warm. You can smell the mist in the air. And you look outside of your window and you see your garden. Or if you don't have a garden at your own home, you're somewhere in just the most beautiful natural area that you can imagine. A place you've actually been that you can recall. And I want you to tap into that feeling that you have. For me, I'm sitting at my kitchen. I have a big picture window in front of me. I can see all of the plants out in front. I see my little strawberry patch. My coffee is incredible. I feel really good. It's a calm confidence. It's knowing my place in the world at this moment. It's not being pulled in any particular direction, but just being happy, content where I am. Now, If you have this in your own landscape, what I'm about to suggest, keep going. If you don't, go wherever you need to go. Because when I lift my eyes a little bit up past this garden, I look across the street and I see an expanse of beautiful green lawn with not a single weed anywhere to be seen. And many days, too many, not actually that many, but you have that smell of just, wow, freshly laid down nitrogen fertilizer. And all of a sudden, your world shrinks and you feel that tenseness come up where you know that across the street, there is just death. You don't, you're like scared to take your dog out there. When they came yesterday, you had to bring your kids inside the house. It was just a little too windy, and they shouldn't be spraying that stuff. And all of those tense feelings, all of that fear, the anxiety, the anger has just like welled up inside of you. And these are your neighbors across the street. So you have these two feelings that are going on at the same time. Now what I want you to do is realize that on this Saturday or Sunday morning, your neighbor is sitting across the street in their kitchen, and they have their cup of coffee, and they're looking out on their expanse of beautiful green lawn, and they are feeling really content and proud about what they've done and how good of a job they are doing taking care of their neighborhood and their community. And they're feeling great, and they look up and they see past their lawn and they look at your garden with all its wild textures and colors everywhere and all the bugs that are there, and they get really anxious. They never want to walk by your garden because they're so scared of all the bees. They know there's snakes in there. They heard a neighborhood kid talking about it one time, and they feel terrible when they look at your garden. Both of those things are wholly true. So let's open our eyes if you haven't opened them already. So this is the reality that we face in our native plant gardens in many ways and in our neighborhoods. Now, I imagine there's a lot of you that maybe live in older areas where lots of people have gardens, so it's not as much of a struggle. In Ann Arbor, it's not really a struggle because, for as progressive as we are, it's mostly libertarian and people don't really care what each other does. You might live out in the country where you don't actually have any neighbors and you can, like this picture right here, you can do whatever you want. But for most of us, I think we have that experience of being in a neighborhood and having a lot of conflicting emotions, essentially, that are going into what we are trying to accomplish in life. And what I want to do today is tell you how to attract humans into your native plant garden. Because for me, it's not enough, not even for me. We could all have the most beautiful native plant gardens. We get rid of all of our lawn. It's so amazing. We're like putting highly conservative species in there. We've had it for 35 years. Some rare insects have started returning. But if we're the only people on our block that have done it, then the second we leave that house, our garden is gone. And even if everybody who's really into native plants planted their gardens and got rid of all of their lawn, it still wouldn't make a lick of a difference ecologically across the vastness of our continent. And this is a really important thing to remember because it allows us to focus on what's actually important. Sure, putting the plants in is important, but getting more people on board and understanding that living in an ecological manner is the most important thing. So the most important thing that we can do, therefore, is attract people to our native plant garden. I'm gonna come out of this for just a moment and share. I created a sheet that were you able to send it to everybody or no?
Yes, it's on the chat.
Oh, okay. So if you could all open this sheet right here that says how to attract humans to your native plant garden. Um, I created this today because I've been giving this talk for a while, but I thought, oh, this would be really nice to really sort it out. And what I want, I think, everybody to maybe get first and foremost is that when we are starting with our garden, and I'm sure many of you have gardens already, and probably didn't start at this part, but if we can understand our emotional context when we're going into it and we can really ask ourselves, why are we doing this? That can help us at the beginning of the design process. And if we're thinking about it in terms of, are we thinking about it in terms of ourselves or are we thinking about everyone? And when we think about everyone, it's really easy for us to think about it's really easy for us to think about the insects. It's easy for us to think about the plants because we don't have as much emotional baggage with them as we do with other people, right? I'm going to guess that maybe a lot of you are really upset with humanity in general. I know that I am. Um, but it's important for us to be forgiving of humanity because we need to see that humanity is just the same as all those insects and all those plants. It is another part of the ecosystem. So if we're really doing this for the purpose of the ecosystem, we need to bring people in. We need to make sure that in our heads and in our hearts, humans are holding as much weight in our consideration as any of the plants we're going to be putting into the garden. And, what I like to, remind, especially a lot of our clients, is that being ecologically minded means that you have to realize that everything is connected. There's no like actually sorting different things out into boxes and taking care of one thing without it impacting another. So we need to be open to understanding how everything's working together. And, I wrote here, ecosystems are made of beings that are connected through the exchange of different forms of energy. And your energy is your main method of ecological communication. So if you can understand that aspect, then when you start on your design process, you know, if you can do, I'm going to open the chat here so I can see some things from you guys. Are any of you right now going or doing some design work or planning on designing a garden for the spring? Can you just say like yes or I am in the chat? Or if you're going to be maybe redoing your garden or expanding your garden, something cool. All right, so there's quite a few of you. So in garden design, we're often thinking about like, okay, what textures go together? What's the height of different plants? Do these particular plants work in my soil? And all of those things, for me, kind of come at the end. The first thing that we need to do, and again, this is going to, if you're out in the country or you don't have neighbors, uh, just suspend disbelief for a moment. Or actually, you don't even need to. still consider how the human community is going to interact with your landscape first and foremost. So if you're in a neighborhood, there's the obvious one, right? Which is that you make sure, we want to make sure the people that go by are going to be cozy. And the one thing that we're not going to do, right, is put tall plants where people can touch them. Because while we all love walking around in the jungle and, getting our faces in flowers and, seeing all the cool little insects that are going to be coming by, most people are not like us. Even people who would call themselves environmentally friendly and like to do things like recycling and buy used stuff, they don't necessarily want like itchy plants touching them, and that's okay. So what we have to do is then respect that in them and be like, okay, neighbor, I'm going to do this for you. And you start to then design your garden with that in mind. So let's say you just have your layout, you have a sidewalk. Let's say we're just gonna maybe put some rocks right next to the sidewalk to even just like kind of widen out that border to begin with. And then maybe the first foot, 2 feet, 3 feet from that, we're just gonna put, plants that don't grow any more than 18 inches. And we're going to be like, okay, that sounds like a great idea. And then we can start to add some more height. Cool. The reason why we're doing this, first and foremost, is that we want to create like curiosity and interest and maybe even awe in our garden, but we don't want to create resistance and recalcitrance. We don't want people like my neighbor is across the street from my house to see the garden and just be like, what is wrong with this person? Because then we have no chance of inviting them in. And we can't do the next steps after that. So I always say the same thing. When you're starting with garden design, the first thing that you have to do is understand the limits of your neighborhood's culture. Really understand it. Walk around your entire neighborhood, see what everybody has, see, how they do their gardens. And then when you do your garden, you push just past that. You don't want to play it too safe because we are trying to move the needle here a little bit, but you don't want to try to move it so much that you get people pissed off at you. How many of you, lots of yeses. Oh yeah, this meshes really well with mental health. I want to give a whole talk about mental health and all that. How many of you have resistant or recalcitrant neighbors or neighbors who are stodgy or cranky? And maybe we could even split this into like, who has the neighbors who are just complete assholes? And then do you have neighbors who are like, nah, a little bit weird about the whole thing? So if you can write that in there too, that would be, yes, awesome. Write that in the chat. So the next step, I think, in designing is like, I always tell people the plants don't go in till the very end. We're not thinking about plants unless you have like a catalog of plants in your head and all of their uses. That's like the last thing that goes in. But one thing that we can do is have like categories of plants, right? So we have our short plants and maybe we'll think like, nodding wild onion, that's going to be a cool border plant. But I'm going to tell you something about nodding wild onion as a border plant. If it has a good year, it's going to be like 2.5 feet tall. It's going to flop over, and then people are going to be stepping on onions, and then your whole landscape is going to smell like onions. And that sucks. I don't know if you've had that experience. I had a party in college one time, and I had some nodding wild onion out in front of the house, and some dude just decided to like step in the garden and hang out in it, and he was like literally just like smashing this into the ground. And he's like, God, why does it smell so bad around here? And I was like, well, you're standing on an onion, dude. But the thing that we can do is, if we're thinking about these categories of plants, is that the next level that we can take it to is think, what are we going to offer our neighbors? How is our garden going to be something that we are giving to our neighborhood? So there's a lot of really easy things you can do. One is strawberries, right? Everybody loves strawberries. So, maybe it's not going to be, you could do native strawberries, they're tiny. But I'll tell you what, any of the Fragaria anassa, I don't know how you pronounce it, those all have native blood in them. So you're at least about a third native if you use the cultivated strawberries. But if you're able to grow strawberries and just give them to neighbors, you can just buy your neighbor's happiness, right? And the cool thing about being generous like this is that you feel really good about it too, because there's literally nothing that's going to make you feel better than giving somebody something and then seeing the smile grow on their face. Raspberries, keep the raspberries a little further back. You don't want them up near the sidewalk. But if you can grow raspberries and you can give like a good space for your raspberries, well, then you're going to have way more raspberries than you know what to do with. And, sure, you can buy yourself a chest freezer and freeze them all winter, but you can also just give them to your neighbors and buy off their happiness. Other things, and this is almost how Adapt started, is that we had so many plants that would just make themselves their own home. And the cool thing about native plants is like, let's say you plant echinacea, not really native to Michigan, but forgive yourself if you've planted it. And it has just spread itself all over your yard. Well, the cool thing about that plant is you can literally just rip it out of the ground, like you can many native plants, cut off a lot of their foliage, put them in some water, and then just give them to people. You don't even need to like be careful about digging them out of the ground. You literally just rip them out of the ground and then be like, hey, neighbor who I've been talking to for years and giving raspberries to, who loves these plants, would you like a few? Um, if you have too many flowers that are getting floppy, you planted yellow coneflower and monarda together, and it has just been 79 degrees and raining twice a week all summer long, and they're both like 6 feet tall. And wild type said they only grew to 4. And all of a sudden, they're just like everywhere. Just cut them. Just cut them and hand bouquets to people as they walk down the street. Let your garden give to everybody who's coming by. Um, if you spend time out in your garden, as I'm sure many of you do, people are walking by, you can talk to them. You can start to, you can see things like a neighbor might be like, oh, there's some flooding over here. And then you might be like, hey, well, let's just dig a hole in my garden and we'll direct some of the water over here. Hey, you got that, I saw you cutting up the concrete on your driveway with that saw. You want to do a curb cut right here and we'll just create a little rain garden? And they'll be like, you can do that? And, then your redneck neighbor who has his big diamond tip saw will come and just have an absolute blast. Another thing that if you're out in your garden, and remember, just like plants are part of your garden, insects are part of your garden, you are part of your garden. You are your own garden gnome. So if you're out in your garden being your garden gnome self, the people who come by are going to think of you as a magical little creature. Allow them to think that. Live that up. And you're this magical little creature that gives gifts of food and flowers, and you can also give the gift of your time listening to people talk and not being in a hurry. Because when you're in your garden, you don't have to be in a hurry because everything's all good. It's an opportunity for you to share yourself with your neighbors. But these things are only going to work if the garden in the first place is something that the neighbors feel good even walking by. So then, let me share this thing again. So why should you attract humans? And the reason why you should attract humans is because you care enough to try to make a profound difference. And the only way that you're going to make the difference that you want to make, and I'm going to guess for just about all of you, you would like to do whatever's in your power to ameliorate climate change. You would like to do whatever is in your power to slow or stop extinction from happening. And you want to do anything in your power. Maybe you don't think about this as much, but to have a world that respects life deeply, and doesn't just pay lip service to life, but really understands the depth and the possibility. And if you want to make that kind of profound difference, then your energy has to be focused on people. Because you, each and every one of you, I'm sure you're all the most amazing people, but I would love to disabuse you of the notion that you're going to make an ecological difference by yourself. You make a tiny little difference. And it's a really American thing of us to think that we're all individually super important. No, none of us are. And that's okay. That's actually really relieving when you can just allow yourself to fall back into the arms of your community. And you can see that, oh, through working with other people, we can make a massive difference together. And, I think that I saw somebody on Instagram, somebody who has more followers than us. But the reason they have more followers than us is because they make their native plant page political, and they sell a lot of stickers, and they made a sticker that said something along the lines of "Dump your Republican boyfriend," and that just like absolutely breaks my heart because I understand the anger that this person feels. But at the same time, like what we're trying to do here is so much deeper than any of our political considerations. And if we understand that, and if we understand the importance of making connections, then the political things start to fade away and we change politics without necessarily being political. We change politics because we actually know that we love each other and are willing to help each other out. And we can talk about things when we're actually friends with our neighbors. And your neighbor might be scared of your native plant garden. And that's okay for them to be scared of your native plant garden. You can accept that because they just have a different perspective. And you can work on your emotional world and try to figure out how, through design, you can bring that neighbor into your garden. And then through just becoming friends with them, it may take 15, 20 years, but you might get them to be okay with dandelions in their yard. And if you've taken a person who's gone from having to do chem lawn 3 times a year, 4 times, 5 times, whatever, to just mowing their grass, then you've made a profound difference in one little aspect, and that person then is not a person who then is telling other people that they should spray their lawn. So we want to attract humans to our yard because it makes a difference. And having good neighbors, good neighborhoods is the kind of thing that's going to make us all happier, and especially as we're like going toward the future, I'm a firm believer that AI is not going to amount to much of anything. And I don't think it matters all that much because I think at some point we'll just be like, you know what, I just want to hang out with my friends. And if we can make our communities really strong, then I think we will find ourselves in a really good place. And that's not to say that, we are going to solve all this, but I really think that attracting humans to our native plant gardens is the way to get and to do it thoughtfully and carefully is a step in the right direction toward making our world a happier, healthier, more just beautiful place to live. And so I want to share one. Oh, I didn't share. I can't tell what I'm sharing right now.
Is your flyer number 2?
Okay, cool. So, so with that, what I would like to say is, our goal is to help develop communities. So we have a community leader in Kalamazoo, but I'm guessing that there are more of, well, I know there's at least one of you who's not from Kalamazoo. But if you're around, we're always looking for community leaders to bring Adapt to your community. We have a community leader training in May, and we're actually going to be hosting our community leader training this year. Is going to have a weekly kind of Zoom class for 4 weeks, and then the 5th week will be our in-person training, which will happen in Ann Arbor. So there's opportunities if you want to become a community leader. If you don't, but you know somebody who does, and you'd be willing to help them, please send us a message. On this sheet of paper, you can, adaptecology.org is our website. You can sign up to become a community leader there. Please do follow us on, you know what, I'll be honest. Sure, follow us on Instagram and Facebook, but don't. Just get off of Instagram and Facebook. We're on Blue Sky as well. It's a rat race. Really, what we want is for you to get out there and put native plants in the ground, meet your neighbors. If it helps you to be on Instagram and follow us, great. If you can stay off your phone, even better. We are looking for somebody who can help us update our website. So if you're really good with WordPress and you want to contribute many thousands of dollars in in-kind donations, we would love that. And we do all that we offer is offered free of charge. And it is all funded through donations. We have been able to get a few grants, but for the most part, we can't get grants because we don't narrowly focus our efforts on any particular group of people. Our group of people that we offer this to is anybody who wants to take their ecological understanding to the next step. So, having said all this, there's one more thing I want to show you guys. One of our future community leaders. Let me do this. Oh, so that's my front yard right there. Clearly more drought tolerant than the yard across the street. This is what I like to say. All we need to do is find the pieces and put them back in place, and then we edit for our own aesthetic and the culture of our neighborhood. This is a really important thing. It gives you power to work on your garden. Work with crazy people. They like to do things too, Sometimes he'll be working on his motorcycle and then he'll be planting some chestnuts. Some people that you work with may in a year later, own a company with you. Do any of you know who this is? She is the national, I don't know if she still is, actually. I should probably look this up before I talk about it, but this is Loris Damerow. She's the president of Wild Ones. So I did design for her yard 2 years ago. She lives here in Ann Arbor, and and this year she's going to be one of our community leaders, and I'm super excited about that. I'm afraid she's stealing all of our intel and funneling it to you guys. We offer our services free of charge because we're looking to remove any barriers between people and having a deeper understanding of their landscape. And, you know, I would be interested in how many of you think this is an absolutely foul looking photograph. To me, I love this stuff. If I could see this all day and I would just, I could watch that for hours. My co-owner, Kat, she hates insects. So community supported ecology. This is the kind of fun stuff we do. If you would like to join, please do. All right, thank you guys very much. I would love to see if there are any questions specific questions that you have.
So I don't know that we can unmute everybody. Claudia maybe could help us with that. Otherwise, I can read questions out from the chat if people want to put
Yeah.
them in the
Yeah,
chat.
I think that might be the best idea, or if there's like a hand raising thing. Our donations are tax deductible, yes. Suggestion for combining vegetable gardening with native plantings or keeping separate. I love that question. I think that any food production should be kept tidy. I think the need, so there's the permaculture world, and you sure can do some pretty interesting combinations of perennial edibles and native plantings, and there's a lot of native plants that are edible. So I would suggest, Tradescantia ohiensis, obviously nodding wild onions. I'm trying to think of aggressive ones. The most aggressive, Retibida laciniata, leaf coneflower.
Yeah.
Ridiculously aggressive, also ridiculously delicious. Plant it, let it go crazy for a year or two, and then every spring just mow it all down and eat it. But if you're doing like, if you want to grow like broccoli and tomatoes and kind of food that's going to give you your sustenance, keep that clean. They can't handle weeds, and you don't want to be wasting your effort. Vegetable gardening is so much more intensive than any other type of gardening that you don't want to be wasting your effort having to like battle native plants, which are gonna, way destroy anything else. And then, with like fruit trees, especially, you really need to keep your everything clean, because it might be easier for you guys in Kalamazoo since your soils are so sandy. But diseases just build up in the soil. The more perennial plants you have, letting litter fall, it just becomes an absolute disaster. Matrix planting is fundamental to native plant landscaping. I highly recommend, if you haven't learned about matrix planting, to check out the book Planting in a Post-Wild World. Pay no attention to their plant suggestions. They are making suggestions for urban areas, but they do have a really elegant explanation of matrix planting. But basically, matrix planting is like you plant in 3 layers. There's the ground cover layer. There's which is just low growing stuff. There's the design layer, which is, up to like 3 or 4 feet. And then there's an architectural layer or structural layer, which is plants that are bigger than that. And then combining these different plants together, or different kinds of plants together, so that you can take up all of the space on the ground, which then keeps the plants in check a little bit, helps prevent weeds from getting established. There's something about matrix planting. Another thing is that it allows you to add a lot more diversity than you might otherwise be able to do. Matrix planting can get really messy, though, if you're not really careful with how you're combining plants, and knowing about their growth habits. So if you can plant a ton of spring things, right? And then you can plant a ton of things on top of that. And they'll look great. But if you plant like a ton of summer and a ton of fall things together, it's going to look terrible. So you just have to be really careful when it comes to matrix planting. Use a fence. We fence in a lot of our gardens. There's so many deer. I wish there were more hunters. Having been a vegetarian for 25 years, I wish there were a lot more people shooting deer. Um, I don't know. I don't know what to say. Like, there's a lot of good-natured people who really did, especially in Ann Arbor, who had like a whole big stop the hunt thing, and uh, when we did have a big deer call here in Ann Arbor, it was amazing for like 8 years. People's gardens were just beautiful, and the natural areas were full of wildflowers. And then slowly and surely, the deer made their way back. And so yeah, so especially you can get a lot of plants established, and then take away the fence, and they'll do fine. But when you plant a new garden, we fence in almost everything. Chipmunks, good luck. Suggestion for low growing, no mow lawns that would be resilient for people. I take it you mean like walking on. If you need people to walk on lawns, don't even worry about it. Just plant a lawn. Just don't spray it and, mow it occasionally. I'm not against lawns. I think there's too many of them, but I think when people are like, a lot of customers will come to us and they'll be like, I hate grass. And literally every time the thought that goes into my head is, no, you hate lawns. And you don't actually hate lawns. You just think there's too many of them. Because lawns are nice. I would much rather picnic on a lawn than anywhere else. I'd rather play soccer on a lawn, baseball, frisbee. Lawns are wonderful. If you need a lawn, plant a lawn. Don't even sweat it. How to work with HOA. Start with neighbors. Always start with neighbors. And all communication should follow, nonviolent communication principles. First and foremost, don't talk trash about anybody. If there's a neighbor, if there's a person on your HOA board who's really annoying, let them be annoying. Don't talk trash about them. Love them. Love them as much as you can. Be generous to them. Just keep loving people that are annoying to you, and get the idea of trash talking out of your head completely, and be on everybody's team. There's no reason why you can't be on everybody's team. So start with your neighbors, talk about the things that concern you, and talk about it from, a heart-centered perspective. I worry that this and this and this. It makes me feel bad. I love seeing beauty. I feel there's not enough beauty here. So start with those things instead of saying it's good to have native plants. If you're on an intellectual level, but you're really coming from a place of feeling, then you're not going to be able to speak well. Because you're going to be lying. You're making justifications for your emotions instead of just sharing your feelings, which is what you should be doing. So I actually don't think HOAs aren't that hard to work with. It's just that people are contentious. And when an HOA says, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this, people are like, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. And it's like, well, then why did you live in a place that has an HOA? That was your choice. So just be okay with that and be like, oh, I understand that the HOA has these rules because it's literally easier to have a lawn than it is to have anything else. If and this is something I tell the people all the time. When people are like, I really want something low maintenance, and I'll be like, oh, do you have a lawn? And they'll be like, yeah. And I'll be like, well, that's your lowest maintenance thing right there. And they'll be like, because what I want people to do is really like suss out their values. Because yeah, I would prefer something to be low maintenance too, but I don't want a lawn. I want a garden, and I'm willing to put in a little bit more work for the garden. So like with an HOA, there might not be people who are willing to put in the work. And if people aren't willing to put in the work, well, then you probably shouldn't have a native plant garden. I do think that HOAs can do certain things where you could take, if you could take lawn out and you could plant it to native grasses, providing some structural. And you guys are gonna freak out when I say this, but I'm so honest. And you can manage it with herbicide. You can just go and you can do a lawn treatment in the native planting. You don't have to do it as much, and you can do spot treatments. But having native grasses with their roots going down 10 feet and that structural diversity, and you know what, if you have to manage that with, a once a year treatment of, whatever the hell True Green puts in their cocktails, way better than having a lawn. You don't have to mow. It's absorbing carbon dioxide. You provide some structural diversity. Certainly, there's still going to be a lot more grasshoppers and moths and whatever. They don't really, their life cycles are so short that herbicide doesn't really impact them that much. And hey, it's better than what you have. And then maybe, a few years down the road, somebody will be like, okay, we got to stop spraying. This is ridiculous. Our Canada anemone is aggressive. I have something cool about aggressive plants. I don't think people should be scared of aggressive plants, because what aggressive plants tend to do is they'll go crazy for a few years and then they'll just peter out. The one definite exception to this is Canada goldenrod. Don't it would peter out, but it also grows so aggressively from seed that you can't ever tell if it peters out. It just comes back. But most other plants that are aggressive, they'll be aggressive for a few years and then they'll fall away and something else will take over. Did I convince any of you to be really good neighbors? Or at least maybe slightly better? Uh, All right. Well, if there are no other questions, yeah, please follow us on Instagram. Send us a message. We love to chat with people. And yeah, I hope to see some of you in real life sometime soon.
Sounds great. Last comment, question. Did you wear your Bell's Brewery shirt to win over us Kalamazoo folks?
I did. I did. And let's see. This was from a 5K called the Overrun that we have here in Ypsilanti. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, William, for being with us, Kalamazoo area Wild Ones folks tonight. This program was recorded. We will be sharing it on our YouTube channel as well as Adapt's YouTube channel. All of those handouts will be added to the Kalamazoo Area Wild Ones website so that you can refer back to them or print them off in the future if you didn't get a chance to download them. And we will see you in person at the Portage District Library for Jesse Lincoln in March. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
Bye-bye.